Okay, let's get started here. All right, welcome everybody. Happy to see everybody here joining us today on this webinar. This is something we've been doing throughout the year. For those of you, if this is the first time that I'm meeting you, nice to meet you. My name is Steve Lagomarsino, and I'm the president here at TRC Electronics. A little bit about me and my experience in the electronics industry. I've been in the industry since 1998 where I've gained valuable experience in a variety of roles, including and not limited to sales, engineering, and marketing. And today I get the opportunity to serve as president of TRC Electronics and work with an incredible group of clients that are throughout the United States, manufacturers and different types of companies that depend on electronic components for the success of their business. At TRC, our primary focus is on power conversion components, simplifying the complexity of that design selection, and also making sure that you guys are all receiving an incredible experience when you actually purchase the products from a distributor, TRC Electronics. This is the fourth webinar that we're doing here in 2025. It also is the fourth time that we're going to be discussing tariffs on a webinar in 2025. So what we're going to do today is we're going to present the facts for you of where we are presently with tariffs, how we're responding for our clients here at TRC Electronics, and also provide you with a brief overview of what we see happening with AI on how that's impacting our businesses. And finally, if there's any tariff questions, make sure that we provide you answers so you're leaving here this webinar with answers to your questions, not questions. I should also state that we are recording this webinar, and a copy of it will be available on our YouTube channel in just a couple of days from today. And we'll be emailing you a copy of that link so that you have an opportunity to go back and look at it or share it with anybody in the event that you feel like there's some valuable information here that somebody else that didn't attend the webinar would benefit from. All right, so let's get started here, guys. And by the way, if anybody has a question, I got Melissa Sherman, our senior VP here at TRC Electronics. She's going to make sure that she pauses me if she sees a question in the chat. You could put it in the chat. Also, more than happy to answer any questions. You want to raise your virtual hand, I'll pause and we'll make sure I'll get your question answered. So we're going to start here talking a little bit about tariffs and the latest impact on our clients at TRC Electronics, which is you guys that are joining us. Let's begin with tariffs. So first, we're going to be touching on the reduction in the fentanyl component of the IEPA tariffs, which those are tariffs that the president has implemented on China products, and where there was a reduction from 20 points to 10 points. I'll unpack the complexity of that for you so we can get a clear understanding of what that really means for us, and also provide you an update of where we're at with the Supreme Court tariff case. The Supreme Court is hearing a case arguing against the IEPA tariffs. They've most recently heard the initial arguments on the legitimacy of that. And what's happening right now is that the use of IEPA to implement these tariffs is under legal challenge. So let's talk a little bit about the China power supply import tariff stack, which we have on the next slide, guys. This is how we're going to break it down for you. So for those of you that are purchasing or using electronic components that ultimately are manufactured in China and are imported into the US and make it to your business, this is where we're at right now. And I'm going to give you where we're at and what actually effectively changed, because this is there's an equation here to be able to figure it out. And unfortunately, during the course of this year, this equation has changed several times. And there's different products that have been imported at different phases of the different tariffs, and that really makes it a little complicated for you, the procurer of electronic components from China. So the first component of it, which hasn't changed for us, it's been pretty solid and steady during the past year, but it's been these were initially implemented in President Trump's first term, It's a Section 301 tariff. So the first component of tariffs for us when we import from China is a 25% Section 301. That is pretty solid, and that's been pretty steady. There, you might hear about some Section 301 exclusions that were either happening or suspended. None of the components the power supply components that we import and supply to you as a business or qualify for any of those exclusions. So that's a 25%. The second component, which is the second column here, is the IEPA tariff, the fentanyl emergency component of it. This is the part that was reduced from 20% to 10%. So when President Trump met with Xi over in South Korea from China, this is where they made the negotiation just recently, earlier this month, and they reduced that from 20 points to 10 points. So that particular component adds 10 points to the total tariff stack, where it previously was 20 points. And then finally, we have the reciprocal tariff IEPA section here. This is the 10%. So this here was set to expire earlier this month and move up to like 170% or some kind of crazy number. What they did was they extended the 10% rate for another year. So what we arrive at here with the tariff stack for products that are imported from China are 45%. It's a 25 plus 10 plus 10. And what's important to note is that when does this take into effect? What product is actually going to have the 45%? So any product that was imported prior to November 10th, 2025, it was over the previous like couple months, it was the 55%. It was 25 plus 20 plus 10. But now if we import it on or after November 10th, the new rate is 25 plus 10 plus 10. Now, what we all should be aware of is that product that was imported prior to November 10th, we have product that was imported at 55%. We have all these different rates that it was imported, and whatever it was imported at that time, that's the actual tariff that was paid to the US government. Notably, many of the importers the importers that were proactive and really prepared for this established a foreign trade zone. And this is something that's important. You could stop sharing for just a moment here. This is important to understand. So TRC Electronics has a foreign trade zone. What that allows us to do is import the products, put it into our warehouse. We delay the payment of the tariffs to the government. Only when we release it from the foreign trade zone, that allows us to be a more healthy company, be able to be more equipped to be able to provide a higher level of service for our clients. By improving our cash flow instead of paying one big bill up front. Now, we're entering the product into the foreign trade zone, what they call privileged foreign status. And that's required right now. We have no choice. There's no option. And what that means when we import our product into the foreign trade zone as a privileged foreign status, that locks the rate at admission. As soon as whatever the rate is at the time it comes into our foreign trade zone, that is the rate that it's going to be locked in when we release it to you, our customers. Now, prior to the president's tariff, let's say like war that's been going on this year, we as an importer would have the option to be able to import it, bring it into our warehouses, either privileged or non-privileged. And non-privileged meant we could release it at the rate at the time we release it, but now there's no option. So bottom line is what you need to know is that if it came into our country before the November 10th, 2025, it's locked in at that 55% or an even higher rate, or maybe lower rate, depending on what it was when it entered the country. But moving forward, it's going to be at this 45%. So let's go back to the deck here, and I'm going to give you an overview of what's happening in all the countries. And I will remind you that while this here you might see just for a brief moment, we're going to have this on YouTube, so you'll be able to grab a copy of this and be able to have this chart. There's all these other countries that we have reciprocal tariffs. There's been a little bit more stability with this. It seems that with maybe one or two exceptions, the president has negotiated these rates, and they're pretty solid and stable with these countries. And so this is an outline of what that looks like country by country. Uh, but there is some news. There is one notable exception, and that's India. So there is news here recently this week that U.S. and India are discussing a reduction in those tariffs because right now they're kind of high, and the president implemented a higher tariff rate on them because of the fact that they were importing oil from Russia. It's currently at 50%. And that really threw a little wrench in the manufacturer's plans because of power supplies specifically, because we've been moving and shuffling manufacturing from country to country. And India, in the beginning of the year, seemed to be a safe option. And once we moved it over there, lo and behold, the tariff actually is higher on India now than it is China. And that was definitely not something that we expected. But back to the news this week, the president stated that the tariffs on India are really high because of the Russia imports on oil, but they've actually substantially reduced that oil imports. So he anticipates bringing them down. So I would look for some news here over the next few weeks for the tariffs on India products to drop. And there's been no indication of what that is, but obviously I would expect it to be much lower than what it is on China, because I do think that at the end of the day, that the president wants China to be the highest tariff country out of all the countries. Let's move along here and talk a little bit about the Supreme Court case that's happening right now, because this is really tremendously impactful for all of us. Anybody that's importing, that's using electronic components that are imported into the country, and whatever country they're coming from, they have some type of tariff, and specifically they have some type of IEPA tariff. So what's happening right now? There's multiple stages when the Supreme Court uh, is requested to view a particular case. First, the step one is there's a petition. Then is the step two, they decide whether they're going to hear the case. Step three is oral arguments. All three of those have happened already with this particular case. There's only one more step remaining, and that's the final decision. So on November 5th, the Supreme Court heard the oral arguments, and the arguments are that this is the way the president's using IEPA wasn't the intention of IEPA is not being properly applied right now. So the case against them is that the president is not authorized to issue these blanket tariffs under IEPA because there's not an emergency that authorizes him right now. What's not on the table is if the government is using Section 232 or Section 301 tariffs. And if you recall a couple of slides ago, one component of the tariffs that we're working with from China, and only China, is Section 301 tariffs. That's at 25%. That's not what we're hearing right now, because that is those tariffs went through a legitimate process. Nobody's arguing the legality of implementing those tariffs. So why we should care here is because the outcomes are ultimately going to change whether these landed costs for us using these electronic components from China are actually going to change. And even moreover, whether or not those of us that have imported electronic components from China, if this does get overturned, are there going to be refunds? And is the government going to actually refund the importers of record over $100 billion of IEPA tariffs, not only from China, but from every country that the IEPA tariffs have been implemented against? Now, what's the timing of this? Well, at the very latest, they're expected to have a decision on this by June 2026. But what I could tell you, if we observe what's been happening, everything has been on an accelerated timeline. So things are moving quicker than you would normally expect because of how important this is and the complexity of this and the magnitude of importance that this decision will make on the country and the companies and the businesses that are importing, and an additional tax that they're incurring on their imported products. So let's talk about here in the next slide what they're really deciding here. So first things first here is they're going to be deciding whether or not we have the president has the authority for these broad tariffs under IEPA, Or are they just really simply taxes that require Congress to be able to approve because the power of taxation is in Congress? So when the Supreme Court was reading the text, they're having discussions and they're looking at like, what does this really mean for us? Does the president actually have the power for this? What does the text of IEPA actually state? Now, what this looks like here for the potential path for the government is that are they going to be able to import similar tariffs like this, or are they going to have to stop implementing these types of tariffs? So as I mentioned, the timing here is going to be late June 2026, and nothing changes for today. Right now, we're sticking at all the IEPA tariffs are in place. So that's something that we're just going to need to be waiting and be patient with and watch. And that's something I'm going to talk a little bit about, like what's the probability of the different outcomes here. So the takeaway is, oh, one more, go back, Melissa. The final takeaway here would be that the court may end these blanket IEPA tariffs, which are being implemented on every country that we import from, but not banning other tariff tools. There's other tariff tools such as Section 301 and 232, which will stay in place. Okay, we can go to the next slide now. So let's talk a little bit here about well, what's going to happen. So it's really interesting because these prediction markets, something that we've been hearing a lot about in the news, and it really piqued my interest because I really never paid much attention to them. But there actually are prediction markets where it's a marketplace where people can actually buy and sell $1 payouts contracts tied to a future event. And it's basically measuring the odds, and you can watch the prediction markets change as events evolve with a particular, in this case, the Supreme Court case. We're going into oral arguments for this case. The prediction markets had a 50-50 that whether the Supreme Court was going to overturn these IEPA tariffs or be able to say, hey, these are good to go. But after the oral arguments, the odds increased against the tariffs because listening to what the skepticism from the Supreme Court justices, so now the chances that these tariffs are actually overturned or struck down increased to 65 to 70%. And these actually prediction markets, you can go find them online and you can see the charts moving for different events. So what really moved them? Well, it was really about the skepticism from the different chief justices. There were more of them that were skeptic. And the way they were looking at it is, hey, a lot of skepticism was that the bottom line is these tariffs are actually literally a tax. They're an import tax, and that's something, and they're collected from companies at U.S. points of entries. And on this being a tariff question, who has the power to tax? Is it the president or the Congress? And it was clear to them it's the Congress. And now it's just a question of whether there's really a national emergency that justifies this. Because they can look at this case and say, well, any president can create any type of emergency and elect to tax imports based on any type of emergency that they can kind of manipulate. So what's most likely to happen? Most likely is the court strikes these down. Uh, and we'll know that at the latest, late June 2026. And what does it mean for all of us? Well, what that means is that they could decide that, well, we'll strike them down and moving forward, we're no longer permitted to collect them. Or we could strike them down and say, obviously, moving forward, you're no longer permitted to collect these taxes. And in addition to that, there's going to be a process for any importers of records to request your money back that you paid for these IEPA tariffs at time of import. And there's going to be a whole complicated refund process that will be drawn out and obviously be very labor intensive, administrative intensive. So the way we want to prepare for this is there's two ways we need to prepare. One is that, okay, hey, everything stays the way it is. They don't strike it down. It is what it is. We have stability. The other is that, well, they do strike it down. Well, what the president will start doing is using the legitimate replacement tools, which is like he did in the beginning in his first term with Section 301 and Section 232, start applying for more targeted tariffs but that takes time because there is a process time and an approval time in order to implement Section 301. Well, what's good for that is it gives all of us time to prepare for changes versus the president just announcing in an afternoon press conference that he's effective immediately implementing a tariff, and there's no time for any of us to adjust. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. So, couple of things that we should know here. If these IEPA tariffs are struck down, let's expect that we're going to have different tariffs. They're just going to be replaced, but there's going to be a gap. There's going to be a timing gap. So if when the tariffs are struck down, expect there to be a gap between when we're importing and receiving tariffs and not. So we'll have a window to import products at a much lower tariff from all these countries. And depending on how fast they can move and how intentional they can move through the more complex and time-consuming processes for Section 301, et cetera, will have an opportunity. And finally, if they are upheld and the Supreme Court says, hey, these are legitimate and there is an emergency in the United States, expect more of a status quo with more guardrails and possibly some more predictability for the tariff landscape, where what's been really challenging for all of us in 2025 is lack of predictability of what the cost of goods are going to be, which really has limited our ability to project into the future and plan properly. And for some of us, it's held us back with some of our growth because we've not been able to have predictability and been able to be more aggressive where we've had to be more conservative. So this is really what U.S. manufacturers that use electronic components and are importing them in the US, or any business that's purchasing electronic components that are ultimately imported from other countries, need to know that moving forward, this is what the future holds for us in terms of tariffs. And what we're going to show here is a little bit of transparency. On the next slide, we've got a snapshot here of the last, including this time and the last previous two times, of what our shifting inventory looks like. And if you see the blue bars are May 31st, 2025, and you can see at our company, TRC Electronics, 44% of our inventory had 0% tariff. And today that is now only 20%. So we went from 60% of our inventory having some type of tariff that was billed at time of import to now it being 80%. And also the different tariff rates depending on the country that it was imported from or the timing of the import. You can see where how that's evolved over time and why that's relevant for everybody here. When you purchase your components from TRC Electronics, we're going to be transparent of what the actual tariff was at time of import and only relay that to you. So if we paid 0% tariff on a particular product, you'll pay no tariff on the upcharge. But if we pay 25% tariff, we're only going to, then we'll accurately relay that to you. So what's TRC doing? How are we responding? So this is what we're doing here on behalf of all of our partners on the call today. So we're going to continue to bill the clients the tariff charge of the actual lot of the product that of what we're billing you. So we have good records, solid records, great transparency of every item, every SKU, every specific lot, and what the actual tariff charge was at time of import. So we have no excuse not to be transparent with you and accurately bill you and not just simply bill everybody at a higher tariff rate. Also, secondly, we'll be repricing tariff charges on any existing sales orders that will clear customs on or after November 10th, 2025 to reflect, if this is a China product, to reflect a 10-point reduction. And what we do is we do that just prior to shipping. We don't do it too far in advance because then we might be updating an order 5 times the way things have been going. So what we are doing just out of for efficiency, not only for us, but for you, is we update that we do it. We have a check internally, a process to make sure that what we're billing is accurate. And if we see that we imported at a lower rate because we quoted it to you at the 55%, but we actually imported at 45, we'll make that adjustment on the sales order, which will adjust what we actually bill you. And now thirdly, for new quotes moving forward or new sales orders on China product that has not yet been imported, we began quoting the 45% tariff stack. So on new quotes for China items that we have not imported into the country, if we don't have stock or if it's on the boat, it's on the way, we'll be making sure that we're accurately quoting you the 45%. And finally here, we're working to keep shifting supply. So we continue to work with our power supply manufacturing partners to transition productions to countries with the least impact. Because there's been so much volatility, that slowed down a little bit because the manufacturers did not have certainty of what the landscape was going to be like. Previously, it always seemed pretty clear that China was going to be at a major disadvantage, and it was clear just to simply leave China. But then when we put a 50% tariff rate on India and manufacturing was shifted from China to India, and now it's going from India back to China, that slowed that down a little bit. So we really just need more predictability where we say, hey, this is what it is. Now we've got the rates, and it's going to be like this for the foreseeable future and for years to come. That would help everybody a tremendous amount because that would give us the confidence to make the investments that the manufacturers need to make into the other countries. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about AI too. We're going to touch on this because I've had an opportunity to at a ECIA executive conference or just about a month ago. We had a great speaker, Zach Cass, who was a former head to go-to-market at OpenAI, and he was really incredible and really spoke to what's happening here and where AI is heading. And I think this is really impactful for all of us. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview where we are at in the different phases of AI. We're in that first phase where right now the AI is enhancing apps, or we're just simply prompting AI to draft text for us, code, whether it's you're developing something, you're using it for emails, you're using it for different ways. I'm gonna give you some examples where you're prompting it and it's giving you a response. But where we're headed here shortly and beginning in next year is where the agentic AI at scale is going to start happening, where you have you're going to have be able to use tools that have multi-step work where you're going to be able to call it and it's going to be able to perform multiple steps for us, especially for us using a lot of software. If you're using ERP or CRM, you're going to see a lot of this. This is going to really accelerate what we're doing in businesses in terms of the productivity and the speed of what we're doing, and ultimately not only the experience for us and the efficiency for internally in our businesses, but the experience our clients receive. And then finally, where the natural language phase of it happens, where this is where it's going to be embedded everywhere, and it's going to be where you state an outcome, and it's going to actually do things for you. It's going to be really wild where this is going to be something that's going to totally change the world. And the more that I speak to individuals that are involved in this and you hear more about it, it is really going to change the world in a major way for us and how we experience it. So we got three different types of AI. And what I thought I'd do is give you some examples, because when we talk about we're in phase one, and it's the prompted AI example. This is where you ask a question, it returns a one-time recommendation or draft. This is like a ChatGPT, or you name your favorite AI that you use. It doesn't log into systems. It doesn't pull live data. It doesn't take actions for you. So let's say that you're in procurement, this is where you'll upload an Excel document of inventory and a 2-week forecast, and you say, hey, recommend what to buy in quantities. That's where prompted AI is. That's an example of prompted AI. Or engineering, an engineer says, hey, from this schematic and data sheet PDFs, extract the bill of material for me and give me the ratings, the rating table at 60 degrees ambient for all these components. That would be something where you prompt it, you give it the information, and it can provide it. But I could say that AI is going to definitely impact everything we do in our business right now. And I was on a call with some individuals today, and we were on a call with our vendor, our service provider for our ERP system, SAP, and they were sharing with us and giving us a forecast of what's coming with AI features that are going to automate so much that we do in our ERP system. And again, it's going to increase the speed, the productivity, accuracy of internally, but ultimately improve the client experience because everything, well, when we can do it faster, when we can do it at a lower cost, when we can do it more accurately, that all improves the client experience and the product that you provide the client. The next slide we'll talk a little bit about is agentic AI. This is when you ask a question and it returns a one-time recommendation. It does not log into systems, but it'll pull live data. So example of this is going to be where in procurement, you're going to ask it to, hey, create a proposal for X amount of SKUs under reorder point, fetch the inventory and forecast, supply MOQs, lead times, tariffs, cash cap, and draft the PO lines in ERP and send it to the buyer for approval. Or an engineer is going to ask, hey, automate test planning, and the agent's going to read the spec. They're automatically going to generate a test matrix and fixtures list. They're going to book the lab time for you in the calendar and produce a first-time report template. This is where, when you have the agentic, where it's going to be doing everything for you and it's going to have better access to your system. Melissa, you want to go next slide? And now here is where we're going to, the ultimate place where we're going to go. This is where, like, when, I forget what Elon Musk calls it, his human bots or something, his robots that we're going to have actually people just doing things. This is where we're going to be able to describe what we want, and the platform is going to route the work to multiple agents and systems, enforce policy, and bring back an approval-ready result where you can ask them for, like, if you're in procurement, it's, hey, plan next month's purchase orders across all sites. Make sure you coordinate with finance on cash limits and brief me at 3 o'clock with any exceptions to this. Or engineers are going to say, hey, get revision C ready for this design review Friday. Run the worst case thermal update, run the worst case and thermal update, the bill of material with available parts, sync it to the PLM, and brief the team at 3 p.m. where they're actually going to do the work for you. Now you've got something where it's actually going to be able to do the work and perform the work for you. All right, Melissa, we can stop sharing here for a moment. Okay, you can stop sharing the screen for a second. This I blew through a lot, guys, about what's happening with tariffs. Also, a little brief overview on what we're seeing with AI and where we're headed, because that's going to change our business. And we want to see every one of our partners that are on this call succeed. And if we're not embracing AI, we're going to be left behind. And how are we looking at the future and the use of AI, not only to increase the productivity of the company and efficiency and accuracies, and but also how do you improve the client experience at the end of the day by leveraging AI?
Yeah, Stephen, I received a couple questions here direct about Section 301 tariffs specifically. You were talking about other countries possibly being added to Section 301 and the process time. Are there any predictions on additional countries product being added there, since China's just there now? If so,
Yes.
what are those countries? And then the second part to their question was, how long typically does Section 301 take to get approved?
So great question. So first is that if the Supreme Court strikes down the IEPA tariffs, expect the president to use Section 301 for practically all those countries. He's just going to reapply and go back through the Section 301 process or the Section 232. Now, so that's how I would expect that. And also the China IEPA tariffs, he would just simply reapply that through Section 301 to get back to where he wants to go. That would be my expectation, and that seems to be like, because they already, the government, the administration's already working on this because that's their plan B. They're already figuring this out. And in the timeline, I can't speak to what it's supposed to be, but if we remember when in 2019, there was a like a few month period where they had to go through a period where they actually do this research and they go through this process to get it approved. And then they give notice on when it's going to actually be implemented. So you're looking, if I remember it correctly, it was a 3 to 9 month process between the time they said they were considering Section 301 and actually what they do, because there's also a time for Section 301 also requires a time for appeal where there's an appeal process, and that requires like a waiting period.
Great. And they just typed a follow-up question to that. How does TRC prepare their clients when there is timing like that for Section 301 in the event that there's going to be a 3 to 9 month advancement? How would TRC prepare their clients for that?
Yes. So if there's so a couple things that makes me think of a couple of things. If we have a window where we can import and we lose all these tariffs, let's say the window ends up being like 6 months, we're hopefully, Your Honor, you haven't unsubscribed from our emails because you would want to see the emails that are coming to you, because we're going to be notifying you. That's why it's really important to make sure you're getting our emails, because that time we're going to be, number one, the marketing team is going to be sending you emails that I'll be personally writing to inform you of the opportunity. And to the extent that we can reach the thousands of customers directly on the phone, we're also going to be reaching out on the phone. So that's why having a relationship with one of our account managers internally in the organization, that's beneficial, because then they're able to communicate with you. And so whether we have a window or we have something changing that's either going to benefit or not benefit our clients, we're going to be communicating that as soon as we know, and to the extent we know the information. Okay, any other questions, guys?
There's one more coming in here. Hang on.
Okay.
AI. So a lot of us are small business owners. How could we make an investment into AI without a major financial investment? Everything seems to cost a lot of money.
Right. Okay. Well, hey, look, if you can have ChatGPT for $20 a month. And if you're a small business, and I don't know, what's small, like that's relative. But if I'm a business and I'm less than $5 million in revenue or less, and I'm on a limited budget, it's $20 per user per month to get on ChatGPT 5. And you're going to be able to increase the efficiency of what you do just by leveraging that. You find ways to use that. And within there's different types of apps within it. So that's first. And then second, the cost of this will initially, anything when it first comes out, the costs are going to be higher, but you're going to see the cost of this over time diminish tremendously, because it's going to, anything, when it first comes out, it's not a commodity, but it all becomes commoditized and it diminishes the price of it. So you're going to see that cost come down. All right, good. All right. Well, hey, great seeing everybody. We'll have this recording for you guys on YouTube. We'll send you a link. There'll be a blog about it on our website as well. And I appreciate you guys joining us and investing the 30 minutes or so that we have here. And Melissa, you want to put up that last slide here? If anybody needs any type of support whatsoever or has any questions, let's just give everybody, there's an easy way to contact us. You can email us. If you don't have a direct person to email, you've got a general email. Here's our phone number. You could call in on the office. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have, provide you whatever type of support you need so that you all can succeed in your business. We do this type of webinar once a quarter. So this was our final one for 2025, unless something major news breaking happens between now and the end of the year. So I want to wish everybody happy holidays and a very happy new year. And we'll definitely see you on the first quarter webinar in 2026.